What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today I'm going to give you the full tour of the cabin that I built here in Alaska. I'm going to tell you all the details about how big it is and what kind of foundation it has, the insulation, everything like that. So before we get started, I just want to say that I had no building experience going into this. This was the very first thing I built, and I hope that encourages you guys out there to try out projects that you've never tried before. If you've never built anything, you totally can. Just keep one foot in front of the other. For the foundation, we did concrete pilings. We drilled 4 feet down with an auger and filled with concrete, and then used brackets to support the beams that go across. And those are 12-inch by 4-inch beams at 20-foot lengths, which span the distance of the cabin.
So this is one of the sauna tubes, which is just the little top part sticking out. It goes down into the ground about another 3.5 feet, and it's mounted on with these brackets, which I had to shim with 2x4s because I did them wrong. Yeah, anyway, that's under the cabin. I keep a lot of stuff under there. That's the foundation.
The cabin is a 16 by 20 foot. This side right here is the 16 foot and the long side is 20. And the porch that comes off the front is 8 feet. The roof pitch is 8 by 12 and the porch roof pitch is a 2 by 12. So it definitely tapers to a much more mellow pitch as it comes off the front, which just allows more sunlight and has kind of a cool cabin look to it. So all the framing in the cabin was done with 2x6, which allows for a little bit more insulation than a 2x4. We're in the interior of Alaska where it gets down to -20 pretty commonly in the winter, actually. So having that extra bit of wall space for insulation is really nice. The floor is insulated with 2-inch thick foam, and then I reinforced it with whatever leftover bat insulation I had from the walls. I think one of the improvements I'd like to make is skirting it, which basically means putting a retaining wall around the bottom that kind of keeps the air in, and it makes it a lot warmer, I've heard. So the roof is framed with trusses, which allows for a lot more space for insulation. And we have R38 in the roof, which is really important because all your heat goes up, obviously. And so having a full foot of bat insulation in the ceiling is really nice. It keeps the heat in well. And then on top of that, we actually still have another foot or so, or half a foot of airspace in between the insulation and the roof, which allows for what's called a cold roof and a lot of ventilation. So that way you don't get ice buildup and different melting problems on the roof because it stays pretty cold because all the heat stays in and then ventilates out. It's also really important to have your ridge vents up there, which is that little vent right at the top of the ridge. All the moisture that's inside the cabin goes up and will make its way into the roof eventually. So having those vents there is really important. I actually didn't put those in originally, and I noticed a lot of condensation buildup on the eaves of the roof, which was actually starting to kind of damage the plywood and even mold a little bit. So once I put in those ridge vents, I had no more problems, and it vented all that moisture out of there really well. So the siding on the cabin is all rough cut spruce lumber from the local area. Basically, sawmills around here, when they make a 2x4, one of the byproducts is this flat, rough-cut slab. And it makes for really cool siding, I think. It just kind of has a cabin-esque look to it and fits into the surroundings. So if you guys are looking to do a similar siding, it is pretty cheap and not too bad to install. Underneath that is a layer of Tyvek just to keep the plywood safe from moisture, and it also helps cut down on draft in the cabin. So I do recommend kind of like wrapping it with some kind of house wrap like Tyvek and then putting your siding over top of that. So for the gable ends of the cabin, we did cedar shingles, which are very expensive to buy brand new, but a lot of times people rip them off of old roofs and they'll give you away like the whole roof for really cheap. So I think it was like maybe $100 I paid to do both sides of the gables. I think it looks great. It's very cabin-esque, and the old weathered shingles kind of match the rest of it. So anyway, so that's the foundation and the framing and the siding, and I'll take you guys around and go check out the porch. So I think that any good cabin needs a porch to sit on in the summer, and this one's just 8 foot coming off the front here, and it overlooks the pond, which is out this way. So it's kind of in the summer, that's like a kind of a marsh pond with birds and frogs and stuff like that on it. So it's really nice to sit out and look at. But yeah, anyway, 8-foot porch coming off. I've got a big beam up front, which is supported with pier blocks instead of poured sauna tubes. The poles that you see are actually from the property. They're called burled spruce poles. And it's when the tree gets some weird deformity and they grow these big burls on them. I was really lucky to find them on my own property and have them for the cabin. So I think it really gives a unique look to it. Another cool thing I want to show you guys is my stairs. These were just log stairs that my good friend Steve built. And he came out with a chainsaw one afternoon and a little bit of cowboy and just got them done. He'd never built them before, but he just kind of figured them out as he went. And in the summer, when you can see them better, they're really cool, but just a really nice look to the porch. And yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate you doing that. So we got some Adirondack chairs sitting out front for enjoying the view in the summer. And then over here, I've got the wood pile, which is normally stacked full of wood, but I actually just emptied it out. So that'll need to be restocked here soon. And then a little area for cutting kindling. Then here I've got my kindling splitter, which I just use a hammer on top of a axe head and just hit the kindling to make it right here. So it's nice to have all your firewood and kindling stuff here on the porch to move inside. So that way it's just easy to do. Let's head inside and I'll give you guys a tour. So I really enjoy cooking while I'm out here at the cabin, so I did make a pretty big kitchen. I built all the counters myself and stained them and put a polyurethane kind of coat on the top. So for cooking, I have a 24-inch range. It runs off of propane. It doesn't need electricity to run, which is really important out here since I'm off-grid, and it's really nice to be able to cook when the generator's not running, so it's nice to have something that doesn't need electricity to function. So this is a dry cabin, which means it has no plumbing or running water. And for washing hands and doing dishes, this is one of the best things that you can get is what's called a hot pot. And basically I just fill this thing with snow or water and put it on the wood stove, or I can also cook it on my cook stove. And just get really hot water, and then it has a spigot out the front, so I can, feels good, wash my hands and do dishes. And this just drains down into the sink, which I have plumbed down into a bucket down below. And then every couple of days I just empty out that bucket. And boom, done. I don't have to worry about pipes freezing or anything like that. So the secret to off-grid living is efficiency of space. And I built this little pot hanger for that exact reason, just to get my pots up and out of the way and a place to put them. And I think it kind of looks nice too. So anyway, they kind of slide on these little blocks, and yeah, it's a neat little project. So those are super easy to make, so don't buy one online, just go build one. I put in some overhead cabinets that I found at a thrift shop for really cheap. You know, keep spices and coffee filters and food and that kind of stuff up there. Coffee pot, and of course a crock pot for slow cooking meals while we're gone. We got a refrigerator and a little spot for the trash, places to put your boots and hang your coats right here. We end up with all sorts of coats and waders and hats and backpacks and boots and stuff, so it's nice to have like a little mud area for all your stuff. I do wish I had an Arctic entry. That would be great to keep all of your wet clothes and things like that in, but anyway, this is kind of our equivalent for it. So as you guys can tell, there's electricity coming to the cabin. That's all run by a 2,000 watt Yamaha generator, and then the cabin is wired to take in that electricity. So my cabin was wired by one of my old high school buddies, Mason, who actually flew up and wired it for me. He's an electrician these days. And hiding underneath these coats is our breaker panel. So it's actually a pretty legit job. And one day, if I ever try to hook up to the grid, which I probably won't, this will be able to be converted over to that. So appreciate it. Thanks, Mason. So my favorite part of the cabin is the wood stove. This one works really well. It's one of the newer efficiency wood stoves that basically re-burns the gases twice as it comes off. So what comes out of the chimney is a really clean smoke. It doesn't clog up the chimney pipe at all. In fact, if you burn it hot enough, it's designed to never have to be swept. I kind of take that with a grain of salt, and every couple of years I'll go through and chimney sweep it to make sure there's no creosote buildup in there. If you get a chimney fire going, that's a pretty dangerous situation, so I just kind of sweep it once in a while anyway, but technically it doesn't need it. And yeah, it works really good. I can get about 6 to 8 hours of burn time if I really pack it full. So I can sleep through the night and wake up in the morning, come down and put a few pieces of kindling on it, and there's usually enough coal to have it start up. I also have a propane heater that I'll show you guys here in a second, but the main source of heat is obviously the wood stove out here. I'm sure some of you guys are noticing that the wood stove is really close to the wall, but it's actually designed to be that close. It has a built-in heat shield on the back that gives it a clearance to combustibles rating of like 4 inches. So I know it seems dangerous, but that is actually totally up to code for this stove. And then the chimney pipe that's coming off of it is double wall chimney pipe, so that also allows it to be a lot closer to combustibles than a standard single wall. So don't worry, it's actually legit and it's allowed to be that close to the wall. You can start to see discoloration behind stoves that are getting too hot against a wall, and as you can see, this one doesn't have any discoloration on the wood at all. So the stovepipe then goes up to double wall insulated, which goes through the ceiling and out to the roof. And yeah, so the whole cabin is sided with what's called knotty pine tongue and groove. And it took a really, really long time to do the whole cabin because I did like 3-inch tongue and groove instead of the standard 6-inch boards. But it was a lot cheaper than those bigger ones. It's a very thin tongue and groove, and it looks really nice. It just takes a really long time to install. I think I got it at like Lowe's. I'm not sure they sell that stuff anymore, but if you can find thin tongue and groove paneling, it's a lot cheaper than the thick stuff, and I think works really well. It definitely is harder to install and make look right, but with enough time and effort, you got it done. Every time we came out, we tried to do a little bit more with the wall until one day it was finally done, so. And then we got the living area over here where we hang out. I've got a little handmade table that my wife built. A lot of people come over and spend the night for big adventures, so we have a futon that pulls out into a full-size bed. So we got a cozy love seat that backs up to the kitchen. I even put a little TV in here. I kind of feel like it's cheating, but you know, it's nice to have some entertainment once in a while. So this is my secondary heat source. It's a propane heater. It's not vented or anything, so I try not to use it too often. I mostly use it to warm up the cabin when it's really cold, or if like I'm gonna be gone for an extended period of time, just to keep it at like 50 degrees. But it's nice to have 2 sources of heat in case something goes wrong with the other, or just if you really want to get the place warm fast. But anyway, a non-vented propane heat source is not good to leave on all the time just because it produces a lot of moisture. It doesn't put off any CO or anything like that. It's definitely a clean burn, but it's very moisture heavy, so which is nice sometimes because it can be really, really dry here. But anyway, I have this hooked up to a tank on the outside. It's really important to have a ceiling fan. If you notice, I have 10-foot walls and really tall peak of the roof, so a lot of the heat goes straight up. So to have a ceiling fan to push the warm air down is super, super nice and keeps kind of a more even temperature around the whole cabin. So a lot of people like to give me a hard time about my stairs. I built them with leftover pieces of siding, and they've held up good over the years, so I don't know. I think they're doing okay. Little dining area over here that will sit and have meals and watch out over the pond. So there is no bathroom in this cabin. We use an outhouse, and that's pretty normal for Alaska standards. I know a lot of people think that's crazy, but just walk out to the outhouse when you gotta go, and that's a done deal. All right, let's go check it out upstairs. So this is the loft, which is basically just like the bedroom. We got a queen bed up here, and then I also have a smaller twin bed for guests or dogs or whatever. But yeah. Got a little side table and what I call the charging station. I plug in all my batteries and laptops and different things for camera gear there. It's great hanging out in the loft. It's just cozy, looking out over the cabin, laying in bed and taking it all in. One of my big regrets is not putting in huge windows over here. I think it would have been awesome to have a lot more light coming in from the top. And I've thought about putting them in afterwards, but I think I'll leave it as is. It's nice to have the efficiency of no windows, but it sure would look cool if those were open. All right, so the last thing I want to show you guys is all the outbuildings on the property. I've got a sauna, I've got a tool shed, a wood shed, and then of course an outhouse. So let's go outside and check that out. So over here is the tool shed, which is important to be close to the cabin when you're building it so that you can get to all your tools pretty quick. But nothing fancy about it. It's actually just an 8x8 shed, and I'll give you guys a look on the inside. Like I said, nothing fancy about this, just a place to keep all the tools, chainsaws, leftover materials, generator, chop saw, things like that. Different oils and things. And I don't have the roof on this insulated or anything like that. It's just open air. So yeah, your shed really doesn't need to be anything pretty, but it's really important to have a place to put all your tools and different things that clutter up the property. All right, and then off to the side of the tool shed, we've got a wood shed. And that's where we keep the majority of our firewood for the year and do most of the splitting and things like that. So I cut all my own firewood out here. Most of it I'm able to take from my actual property. which is about 2.5 acres, by the way, that I actually own. But all of it is backed up against borough land, which basically means that there's no other structures or anything around me for a really, really long ways. It's a true wilderness setting. And even though I only own 2.5 acres, it feels like I own thousands just because there's nothing out there besides trees and swamps. And what burns best is going to be spruce and birch. I also have a lot of cottonwood out here, but it doesn't burn that great. And so it's kind of a wasted wood. All right, and we're gonna make the trek over to the outhouse. So the outhouse was actually the very first thing that I built for the cabin for obvious reasons. I don't know, I didn't do a very good job because talk about having zero building experience. I mean, when I built this thing, I was just totally guessing. So, but it's held together pretty well. And I know a lot of people think that an outhouse is kind of primitive, but I don't know, it's not so bad. So a cold weather outhouse trick is to use this blue foam. And as soon as you sit down, it instantly feels warm, even when it's -20 out, so you never freeze your cheeks. All right, last but certainly not least, I'm gonna take you guys over to the sauna. This is the most recent addition to the property. I built this 2 summers ago with some friends and just got it finished really just this fall with the right wood stove. So here it is. One of the cool things about building the sauna was that I finally had some building experience from building the cabin. So it was the first thing that I got to build where I kind of felt like I actually knew what I was doing a little bit. And for that reason, I think it came out a lot nicer. A lot of the siding and trim and stuff like that is just done with a lot more attention to detail because I wasn't as overwhelmed, and I knew that if I took my time, I could really get it looking a lot nicer. So anyway, here it is. It's an 8x8 sauna, and like I said, it's wood fired. So we'll go inside and I'll show you guys the wood stove. Welcome to the sauna. The whole interior is done with cedar, which gives a really aromatic smell, but it's also really important because of all the moisture that sticks into the walls that it doesn't rot. And cedar is kind of naturally a water repellent wood. So when you're in the bush and you don't have running water, obviously you can't take a shower or a bath. So a sauna is what you use to get clean. You just get really sweaty and then do a sponge bath or pour water over yourself. And not only does it wash you off, but it really like cleanses you from the inside out. So in addition to being a really nice, relaxing place, a sauna is how you get clean out here. I just put in this Vario wood stove, which is a huge improvement over my last wood stove. It's a sauna specific stove, and it has a whole area for hot rocks, which you can put up in here and then pour water on. I really recommend these stoves. They're so awesome. They just are really nice looking for the sauna, but they really put off a ton of heat all at once rather than like a typical wood stove, which is better for efficiency, have a nice long burn time. This one you really can't choke down at all. It just burns all the wood hot and fast, which is really what you want for getting the temps up. And I gotta say, the addition of the sauna has been really cool at the property. Nothing better than coming back after like a long day, being out in the cold and firing up the sauna super hot and just having a good sweat. So yeah, anyway. So then around the back side of the sauna is actually where I keep the generator, so I'll show you guys that. So this little generator is a Yamaha 2000 watt inverter, and it powers the entire cabin. I have a whole nother review video on just this generator if you guys want more details, but these are really, really great. It'll run for at least 12 hours on a single gallon of gas. And it's plenty of juice to run lights and a coffee maker, fan and TV and all that kind of stuff. And we actually built the whole cabin using just the power from this generator as well. So I love this machine. I can't say enough good things about it. If you guys are looking for an off-grid power solution, the Yamaha 2000 generator definitely has my endorsement. So anyway, we just run a big extension cable from here over to the front of the cabin, and that's it. We just add oil and gas. She'll run forever. I know a lot of you out there probably watching this have aspirations to build your own cabin. And I'm not gonna lie, building a cabin is an extremely difficult process, especially if you're doing it on your own. Just be prepared for a very arduous journey. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of thinking, but if you just keep your sights set on the next goal in front of you, you'll get it done. Like I said earlier, I built this whole thing with no experience. It was just a dream of mine to move to Alaska and build a cabin in the woods. So all you guys out there who wanna build your own cabin, just go do it. Save up money for a couple years. It's not crazy expensive. Yeah, just get after it. All right, guys, well, that's all I can think to show you for today. If I missed something or if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask in the comments and I'll get right back to you. My next video is gonna be on how I built the cabin. So the details on how much it cost and selecting land and all the different things that went into actually building it, I am gonna do a whole separate video on. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and a huge thank you to my current subscribers. And I'll see you guys on the next episode of Alaska Cabin Adventures.